Hi everybody, and welcome to this tutorial on CloudFront. So in this exercise, what we're going to do is do a basic configuration of CloudFront that will store some documents and some objects in an S3 bucket, and then we'll create distributions of that content such as text or graphics through CloudFront. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and first create an S3 bucket that we'll be using for this CloudFront. So after this bucket is created, let's go ahead and upload some documents into this bucket. So here I've added one picture and one PDF document, and in the manage public permissions we want to make sure that we grant public read access to this object. We'll keep this just as standard in terms of the tiering. So here we have the two documents uploaded. Now let's just confirm that they are accessible by the internet. So if we go into this object, it gives us a link that should be accessible by the internet. So if I copy this link, and as you guys can see, this picture is accessible through this link on the internet. So after that, let's go ahead and create our CloudFront distribution. So I'm going to navigate to CloudFront and create a new distribution. Now when we're creating a distribution with CloudFront, if you remember, we have two options, either web or RTMP. We'll be using the web one because we're just distributing files and documents through the HTTP and HTTPS traffic. But if we're using Adobe Flash Media Server or the RTMP protocol, we would get started with this distribution method. Now here, the origin domain name, we want to select the S3 bucket that we just created. And we want to make sure we don't restrict access to this bucket. Now basically, if we accept these default values for this, what CloudFront will do, it'll forward all requests that use the CloudFront URL for distribution to the Amazon S3 bucket that we've specified. It'll allow end users to use either HTTP or HTTPS traffic. It will respond to requests for our object. It'll cache our objects at the CloudFront edge locations for 24 hours. It'll forward only the default request headers to the origin and not cache the objects based on the values in the headers. It'll exclude cookies and query string parameters, if any, when forwarding requests for objects to our origin, which is the S3 bucket. And it's not configured to distribute media files in the streaming format. And lastly, it'll allow everyone to view our content. Here's where we can specify the distribution settings. We can either use all edge locations, use only US, Canada, Europe, and so on. But optimally, if it is for a global distribution, you'd obviously want to use all edge locations. Now the AWF WAF, or the Web Application Firewall, allows us to block HTTP and HTTPS requests based on criteria that we can specify. Or we can choose the web ACL or access control list to associate with this distribution. But since we don't have any access control list or WAF defined, no option will show up here. In the CNAME, we can specify one or more domain names that we want to use for URLs for the objects instead of the domain name that CloudFront assigns when we create the distribution. Here's where we can specify any SSL certificates if we have any custom ones, or use the one provided by CloudFront. And additionally, you have options for logging or cookie logging, and then the distribution state, enabled or disabled. Now select enable if you want CloudFront to begin processing requests as soon as the distribution is created, or disabled if you do not want CloudFront to begin processing requests after the distribution is created. So let's go ahead and create this distribution. Alright, so now that the distribution is deployed, we can see the status is deployed. Let's go ahead and test our links. Now, if you recall, we created this S3 bucket called Qasim CloudFront, and I added two different files to this. One was a JPEG and one was a PDF. Now if I click on this JPEG, in order to access this JPEG directly from the S3 bucket, I pasted this link into my browser and it opened up this picture. Now that we've set up CloudFront, I want to make sure that instead of accessing the image from this link, which goes directly to our S3 bucket, I want to access the image from our CloudFront cache. So if we go back into our CloudFront, we see that there's been a domain name that's been provisioned for this CloudFront. If I simply copy and paste this link, we can see that this picture is also accessible via this new domain name on CloudFront. So right now, I'm accessing the CloudFront edge location in order to access this image. I'm not going to my S3 bucket, which is located in the London region. Additionally, if we click on our distribution ID, we can get additional information and make changes and edit the origins and so on. That gets a bit out of the scope of this course, but we are able to change all of the options. If we want to add additional S3 buckets or change the behaviors that we are able to do that here.